Hey all, this is Tom from Tutor Bros. In this video we are going to go over two methods by which we can prove a pair of triangles is congruent. These are the SSS postulate or side-side-side postulate and the SAS postulate or side-angle-side postulate. So the SSS postulate states that if three sides of a triangle are congruent to three sides of another triangle, then the triangles are congruent to each other. And the SAS postulate states that if two sides and the included angle of a triangle are congruent to two sides and the included angle of another triangle, then the triangles are congruent to each other. So let's take all that information and apply it to the problems we see here to see if we can establish which triangles are congruent. So first we'll take a look at number one. We see that we have two triangles and they're sort of facing back to back of each other, almost as if they're about to duel. Now, can we take the information that we're given and determine whether those two triangles are congruent to each other? Well, what do we know so far? We know that this side here in the triangle on the left and this side in the triangle on the right are congruent to each other because of the dash marks indicated in the diagram. And we can say the same thing about this other pair of side lengths. So AB here and AD are congruent to each other because of the two dash marks that we see. So at first glance, it doesn't seem as if we have enough information to determine either by SSS or SAS that these triangles are congruent to each other. But if you look a little more closely, you'll notice that the third side of each of the two triangles is a shared side. It's this one in the middle right here. And I'll indicate it with the three dash marks. So since it's a shared side, and the shared side is equal to itself, we can prove that these two triangles are congruent because all three sides of one triangle are congruent to all three sides of the other triangle. So we can determine congruence here by the SSS postulate. And then when we write our answer, and I'll write it down here, number one, we can say that triangle ABC, triangle symbol, is congruent to triangle ADC by the SSS postulate. So we'll just leave it as SSS. Okay. Now how about number two? So here again we have two triangles, and we know that two pairs of their side lengths are congruent to each other. So we know that this portion here and this portion here are congruent because of the dash marks. And then we know again that this portion and this portion, it's getting a little tight here, I see, are also congruent to each other. Once more, on the face of it, it doesn't seem as if we have enough. But we want to look a little more closely again. Might have to get a little creative sometimes when we're trying to establish triangle congruence. We see that these two triangles are in part formed by two intersecting lines. And those intersecting lines create angles that are opposite of each other. So I'm going to indicate those here and here. Those are vertical angles. And vertical angles, we know, are always equal to each other. So here we have two pairs of congruent sides in each of the triangles, and we have the included angle. The included means that it's between the two pairs of sides, or it's made up of those two pairs of congruent sides. So since we have the two pairs of sides and the included angle, we can actually prove that those two triangles in the diagram are congruent. And we prove that not by SSS, but this time with SAS. So we'll write out our answer down here, number two. So triangle ABC is congruent to, triangle EBD by the SAS postulate. By SAS. Alrighty. Now how about number three? So we have two triangles here. We know that two pairs of their side lengths are congruent, so we know that, label them here, AB and DE are congruent to each other, and we know that AC and DF are congruent to each other, and we also know that angle C right here and angle F down here are congruent to each other. So it seems like we have enough here to determine triangle congruence, but we actually don't, because the angle measures, even though they are congruent, are not the included angle. They're not between the two pairs of congruent sides. So we actually can't use either SAS or SSS to determine that these two triangles are congruent. So our answer for number 3 is not enough info. Now, it's important that we say that there's not enough information. We can't say that these triangles are not congruent, because they very well could be. The problem is that we just don't have enough information to determine that they are.